Let's move on to Liam McNeeley. Now, this is a guy that I'm going to have to fight for a little bit. That's a cool picture, actually. That one in your with number 30. I guess they're both number 30, but the one with the phone up, that's pretty tough. But anyways, Liam McNeeley is an October 10th, 2005 birthday. He'll turn 20 before his rookie season. Another guy who's a little bit older. He's from Richardson, Texas, listed at 6'7", 210. Both those numbers seem about right. I think he's a real 6'7". This season at UConn as a freshman, very highly touted. In 27 games, he averaged 32 minutes, 14.5 points, 6 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 0.6 steals, 0.2 blocks, 1.9 turnovers, 38.1%, 31.7%, 86.6% shooting splits. Really worrying effective field goal rate overall with that. Obviously, effective field goal rate, for those that don't know, takes into account what each shot is worth. And his effective field goal rate is 45.5. Really, really bad. Was just really inefficient from the floor. True shooting goes up because he made a lot of free throws, up to 52.9. Had a 24.2 usage. Also grabbed 3.7% of offensive rebounds, 18.7% of defensive rebounds, 13.1 assist rate, 14.8 turnover rate, 0.8 block rate, 1.1 steal rate. Both those numbers are really bad for a 6'7" guy. 41 free throw rate is good, though. He dunked 4 times. But the real black hole above all else on the statistical profile, 48.6% on close twos. He shot 35% on long twos. Again, 86.6% from the free throw line on 127 attempts. Did take 10.4 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. He took a lot. Only shot 31.7%, but we'll talk about some of the context of that here in a second. For some synergy stats on the year, he was in the 50th percentile in all jump shots, though the 67th percentile on catch and shoot shots, with a 54.5% effective field goal rate on those. Specifically, 63.6% on unguarded catch and shoot shots. He was really bothered by contests, down to 43.6% effective field goal rate, which is only average. Dribble jumpers, he was really bad. 6th percentile in dribble jumpers on 33 of them, 19.7 effective field goal rate. There is one really good sign. On runners, he did shoot 44% effective field goal rate in the 68th percentile. But the big issue here, he was a really poor finisher. 12th percentile at rim finishing, 43.6% effective field goal percentage on layups. Not very good. And again, only the 4 dunks. Now, one of them was a pretty good little poster he got there, but not exactly a high flyer. Stone, I'm going to throw this to you. I think you're the lowest out of all of us on McNeeley. It could be Coop. I don't know. Both you guys hate him. But tell us a little bit about McNeeley as an off-ball player. What you like and don't like, because I think that's the role. He brought the ball up a lot for UConn. He played kind of the de facto point guard. Obviously, it's not like he ran like a crazy amount of pick and roll or anything. But what is the concern here with him as kind of an off-ball player?
I don't have a lot of concerns with him as an off-ball guy, because this is really the only area I think it could maybe be a positive for him. And I'm going to sound way more harsh about him than it's meant to be, but I think he is a really versatile shooter. I think he's a much better shooter than what he showed at UConn. If you watch a lot of the Montverde tape, I think he's got much better touch than he showed. Not nearly to Kon Kneuppel level, but I think it is there. I do think that he can get around screens pretty well. He can set his feet, which we didn't talk about with Kon, but Kon does it at an even better level. But McNeeley can set his feet really quickly, can square up, can shoot off balance. I think he's a very versatile shooter. That's about where the positives for me end. Off ball, I think, is really the one place on the court, off ball offense, where McNeeley can be a positive and can be something that isn't a negative on the court. And that's really For me, I need to come away to be convinced of why McNeeley is better than what I think he is. I need Bryce to convince me that McNeeley holds value in any other aspect of basketball on the court, and that's where I want to be do a 180.
I'm going to start by trying to convince the real haters out there that he is actually a good off-ball player first, even though I know you're already convinced of that. And I'm going to start by going through some of his old shooting numbers. Shooting numbers this year, really not great. I understand that. But at Montverde, and this is not small sample size, 147 jump shots. He had a 67.7% effective field goal rate in the 93rd percentile. Catch and shoot shots, 74.6% effective field goal rate, 92nd percentile. Now, the number that really drags this down is that dribble shooting, 27.5% effective field goal rate, and that's below average, 25th percentile. Again, he was once again unguarded catch and shoot shots, 80 effective field goal rate. Insane unguarded catch and shoot guy at Montverde. Maybe you don't buy all that. Maybe that's not good enough. Okay, Nike playing for Florida Rebels, that is a little bit more athleticism, right? Overall, UIBL. Overall catch and shoot jump shots, he had a 50% effective field goal rate in the 74th percentile. Unguarded, actually, he shot worse than guarded in UIBL, 46.9%, 54.5% on guarded, 85th percentile, 52nd percentile, respectively. The number that really drags it down, off the dribble, 30th percentile, 28.3% effective field goal rate. I think the biggest the easiest thing to help him be more efficient is he just needs to stop taking dribble jump shots. Just stop. He's not good at it. He's been trying them for a while. If you go back, watch that UIBL tape, you'll see him like experimenting with it. It's not good. It's bad. He just needs to not do it. His biggest issue as a shooter is that he's all feel right now. He's not consistent enough and diligent enough in terms of his footwork specifically. While Stone, you're right that he gets his feet set quickly, he is randomly changing his footwork patterns for no reason. It's one thing to every once in a while hop in based on a specific input, right? Okay, hey, usually I'm going to step in left, right, but if I'm hammering hard corner and the pass is to my inside hand, I'm going to hop to it instead of left, right, because hey, I don't want to have to catch and try and twist into my shot. Okay, understandable. What's not understandable is, hey, I'm going to hammer to the corner. The pass is to my left hand. Let me step in left, right. Oh, I made it. Two trips down the floor later, same shit happens. I'm going to hop into it this time. It doesn't make any sense, but he does it. He's too feel based. He turns down shots he should take sometimes because he missed one earlier. And then he'll take ones that he shouldn't at times, not because he made one, but because he feels like he just needs to take one right now. He has to be more disciplined in terms of his ability and willingness to take the correct shots. You know what it reminds me a little bit of is Garrison Matthews. When Garrison Matthews is at his best, he is taking the shots he should take from long range, and he's a damn good shooter. Listen, is that a fun comparison? Maybe not, but Garrison Matthews at his best, really valuable shooter, if nothing else. When Liam McNeeley is like that, he has range, he has comfortability, the mechanics are pretty good. I think he has really good touch on jump shots off the catch, specifically when his body is oriented towards the rim. But he also took a shit ton of really hard movement this year. Like they had him taking the Jordan Hawkins shots, and he is not the level of athlete Jordan Hawkins is to just rise up and create those off weird angles. So he was way more often like completely off balance, taking bad shots. He doesn't have that level of touch, but when he's oriented at the rim, he has really good touch in terms of everything falls softly. He shoots a little bit of a knuckleball. Like he had quite a few shots this year that hit back rim and died and then rolled into the rim because he just shoots a little bit of a knuckleball, which is fine. Like all that is fine. I think he's a really good shooter, but his efficiency numbers have always been dragged down by his out the dribble shooting specifically. And then this year, I think they were dragged down a little bit by an adjustment to the system he was in, but also this is college basketball. It's a small sample size. Like, every once in a while you're just forced to take shots that you shouldn't or whatever. And that has an outsized effect on the type of shooter you are. I think the type of the person he reminds me of most as a shooter is Corey Kispert, where he doesn't have great like touch in terms of off crazy movement. He doesn't have great hips to take movement shots like that, but off light movement, he's pretty good. The thing that Corey Kispert has that McNeeley doesn't have yet is really excellent shot prep and footwork all the time. That is something that's teachable. Like, I'm sorry, it just is. It's a teachable thing. Liam McNeeley is entering the draft like 3 years younger than Corey Kispert was. Is that to say he will be the level of shooter Corey Kispert is? And is that to say that Corey Kispert is like a desirable draft prospect at this point? No, on both of those things. But I do think that's at least a little bit fair. Coop, I just talked a long time. Tell us how you feel about the off-ball scoring, though I'm sure that'll go quick. And then let's talk about some of his on-ball juice, if there is any. Again, for what it's worth, he did play point guard for UConn this year.
I have nothing to add on the off-ball that you guys didn't already hit on. I tend to agree with Stone quite a bit here. My one question. Oh my God, you talkative! Oh my,
I know.
My God, bro.
I do think he's really smart. He uses screens pretty well. Good cutter, sees space, constantly moving. He was never taking a break for UConn. Say what you will. His conditioning was really good. He was running around like a chicken with his head cut off all the time. Never stopped moving, constantly making good reads. He wasn't great at using screens because he has a weak core and he wasn't getting very low on them. But overall, I think just a really good off-ball mover, like in terms of just kind of the traditional stuff. Obviously, there's some issues when it comes to finishing at the rim off of cuts. But anyways, Coop, I apologize.
Oh my God. Biggest asshole I ever met in my life. Oh my God. No.
I don't know that the audio people will pick up on the sarcasm in your voice. The video people will see a little smirk, but yeah. The audio people will be just like, damn.
The audio people is just like, damn, these guys actually hate each other. No, that's the good part of having the visual component. Shameless plug, go watch our YouTube. No, I think my one question is, if he tried to play the Jordan Hawkins role, and Hawkins in the NBA is only valuable because he is so good at shooting that specific kind of shot and hitting all his spot ups. And McNeely's not going to hit those heights. How does he add value to an NBA team? And I think we're going to talk about, and I'll get to with the on-ball scoring. I just don't think he adds very much value. Other than that, I think there's, Bryce's argument that there's some real cool off-ball scoring stuff. Sure, but there's not any. I do want to say one about the off-ball scoring is that the off-ball shooting is cool, but there is no world where he turns that into inside scoring. There's no world where he can attack a closeout, I even think, effectively. There's no world where he's like using that gravity to back cut out of if it's not just directly schemed for him to do. I don't think that he's like a great reader of the floor in that way. And then on the ball, there's like one or two possessions a game where he runs like a kind of cool pick and roll and hits like a touch shot from the free throw line. And then there's like 5 or 6 possessions where he does the same shit and it is ugly, or he's like getting congested at the free throw line and going nowhere. And it's just like, I just don't see anything with the ball in his hands. Bryce talked about the efficiency on the pull-up shot. I think that would be the obvious, like, oh, this is the way he needs to go. But part of that is that, these pull-ups out of the pick and roll are really specific as far as their setup. And he's just kind of doing bullshit, right, when he comes off of a screen. And his core's not very strong, right? So he's just not – there's not that level of comfortability and ability to really do anything because he's not passing the ball either. Really 90% of his assists in the games I watched were just guys schemed to run and around the world, and then I'll hit him at the top of the key. And he's just the setup guy who brought the ball up the floor. So I just don't see what he does on the ball, especially because he's like an embarrassingly bad finisher on the interior.
Yeah, so my one pushback on the finish, and again, I'm going to come across higher on McNeeley than I probably actually am, but just because you guys are going to get the negative takeaways from these two, I don't feel like I need to spend too much time on it. So I'm going to give purely positive stuff, and I'm going to let you two shit on my man McNeeley. So my pushback to the finishing is, yes, he is a bad finisher right now. He doesn't have a ton of craft. The big issue is that he doesn't have very much 1 foot athleticism, so he's always trying to get to 2 feet, and it just doesn't look very good. Like, just straight up, it just doesn't look very good trying to go off 2 feet for him. He doesn't have a ton of craft there. But the two things I'm going to say, he's a really good floater, like legitimately really good floater. When he is coming off handoffs and in the pick and roll, I think the floater is a real weapon for him at times, and he should probably go to it more. He has soft touch on it. He has a good ability to get it over contest, and he doesn't need to do the thing where he's like leaning forward and almost falling over to get it off. He can kind of stop and take it and be on bounds and everything. He's a great foul grifter too. Some of this, and I don't mean this like to mean any type of thing other than it's just the truth of the matter. Some of it is that he's a white guy. It's just a fact. Some of it's that he's a white guy, but he is a great grifter. He gets bodies and he flails around. And a lot of his bad misses this year were he was trying to get fouls and he didn't. And maybe you shouldn't have. I don't know, but he is a good grifter. He had for someone who is not very athletic, and at least anecdotally, I watched a lot of his fouls. These were not particularly like someone else passed him the ball. These were self-created. He had a 41% free throw rate. And with as good of a free throw shooter as he is, it makes sense for him to hunt fouls instead of trying to finish over length and athleticism. Is that a path to efficiency in the NBA? I don't know. Jalen Brunson sure seems to be a pretty damn good, efficient NBA player, where like 90% of his offense right now is hunting fouls. I'm not one of those haters that like hates on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He has like a league average free throw rate, but he every once in a while will do some grifting. I mean, like, I think grift at a certain point is a sign of feel and I hate the term IQ, but like knowledge. I think he has like a kind of weird sense of feel and knowledge, and I think he's a damn good passer too. Like he's way more predeterminate than Kon, and his biggest issue as a passer is that all of his passes are thrown 100 miles an hour on a straight line. He doesn't have a bounce pass. He doesn't have a lob in his back. It's just a fact. Like, watch all of his assists. They are all him throwing a pass 1,000,000 miles an hour at someone. And he predetermines a lot. And because he tries to go through his body, especially on those dump downs instead of going up or down, hands get in the way a lot. He has to improve the craft of his passing. That's a fact. He has to improve the craft of his ball handling too. His ball handling is pretty bad. But I think he kind of has the outlying tools of someone who reads the floor well, is willing and able to throw skips, played in a pretty complex offense where he was making some complex reads, and was fairly effective, not great, but fairly effective as kind of a downhill playmaker and scorer, even with being a bad finisher, because he would either get to the line and be a great free throw shooter, or he would throw a fairly advantaged pass. He turned the ball over a good amount. Some of his assists were just the UConn system, but not all of them. He had quite a few. If you watch through his assists, he has quite a few where he's coming off a handoff or even straight pick and roll, going downhill, and he makes a really good pass. Not all the time, but he's a 6'7" guy who can really shoot the ball and is a good off-ball player and that has that in the bag. I think there is at least a world that matters, and that this is all kind of pointing to a pretty valuable, offensive shooting guard. Nothing crazy, nothing great, but someone who's going to make shots, who can take them off pretty complex movement, who can operate a pretty complex offense, make good passes, and have flashes as a sort of secondary creator. And another thing is he's also just like, I don't know, pretty tough. Like the motor's pretty good. Like he's running around all the time. I think there's just enough there for me to latch on to offensively. I don't know, Stone. What am I really missing here? What's the big bugaboo that I'm not bringing up?
I think for me, it's just that the lows are extremely low, like disqualifyingly low for me. He shot 43.6% on layups. That if you look across like anyone that's regularly mentioned in like a top 60, that's like the lowest of anybody outside of Boogie Fland, who, had the major injury, but like extremely low on layups. I think that the athleticism, Yakachonis and Kon get way too much hate on their athleticism because I think they are good athletically in some ways and not as bad as people think in most other ways. McNeeley, I think, is disqualifyingly bad as an athlete. Like, I think he's just that bad of an athlete where it's really hard to see him succeeding without an elite skill. That and the rest of his skills, in my opinion, or the rest of basketball outside of off-ball shooting is just not even it's a neutral, not even that he's not adding value there, it's that he's actively hurting you. Like, it's extremely horrendous. I think that we talk about the finishing, most of it I think is because he can't stay in the air at all around the rim. Like, he barely gets in the air, he can't finish. He's got a very weak frame and can't finish through contact. He can't explode out of any moves. I think his top speed isn't bad, but the problem is, like, if he's getting out of pick and roll or something, that in the half court, there's just not enough runway. It takes a long time to get to his top speed, and there's just not enough runway in a half court setting for him to get there. So he's never going to get to his top speed in the half court. I think that as far as like the passing, obviously it wasn't the ideal role for him, and but I think it really eliminated like even secondary type outcomes for me, envisioning him in that sort of role where I think he's a bad passer. I think in pick and rolls he was terrible. I thought just really extremely predetermined in a way that is so academy brained where you can't. I don't know if it's fixable, to be honest. Like, it's so prevalent in like every single pass that he throws that I'm not sure if you can change that in a player when it's to that degree. I think that he's got so much, and I think the motor's pretty low, to be honest. Like, I don't think that he seems to lack just a lot of aggression when he's coming out of pick and rolls or when he's doing straight line drives. It just doesn't seem like he attacks with a lot of aggression. And like I said, it's not like he has a ton of acceleration or and he has a pretty poor first step on top of that. I just think that basically everything outside of the off-ball shooting is not only not a neutral, it's just so far away from being a neutral for me that it's really hard to see how they are going to be anything other than negatives for him. And that sounds way worse than, like, I don't hate McNeeley and that sounds super harsh. But as a prospect, like, that's just factually how I feel.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Stone, on the motor. I just don't feel like yes, he does a lot of movement on offense, but he doesn't do anything with his motor, right? He's not like sprinting really hard off of screens. He's just moving a lot. I wouldn't say like he's also not fast. So a sprint to him is a little, a little slower than a sprint for a guy like Hawkins was. But I just don't, especially on defense, which we'll get to. I think that the motor, he just like, let me look at his stats real quick, or I'm going to sound really stupid. 18.7 defensive rebound rate, not awful. Does not grab any offensive rebounds, really. Does not really make any plays happen unless he's sitting like right under the basket in terms of that. And he's huge, so he can make plays like that happen if he's by the rim. He just doesn't really ever tend to be there because he can't score, or he can't really stay on his feet when he's getting into the paint to score like that. Just kind of a worrying. I do think that that's the best way to put it, Stone, is that it's like an almost disqualifying athletic profile to go along with an almost disqualifying lack of skill in a lot of other areas.
I think too, we've talked in the past about players that are like pretty much a negative in every aspect, but they're really elite at one thing. Like Cam Thomas, for example, was just an elite scorer from all three levels, so it's a little bit different. But um, you know, pretty bad passer and pretty bad defender as a prospect. Um, McNeely's one attribute I feel like is less valuable than a lot of one trick pony attributes like off ball shooting, um, and the fact that he's, we think he's going to be pretty good, but I don't think we're nearly as sure as like someone like a Kon Kneuppel, where if he was that level of shooter and had all these issues, then maybe I'd be a little bit higher on him. But there's still a little bit of question as to how good of an off-ball shooter is he actually, because at a certain point production does play some sort of part in it, and we think the production will improve, but that's not a guarantee by any means with him. And I just think that one skill is just less valuable than if he were like a full-time wing stopper and couldn't do anything else, or like an elite shot blocker or something. Like I just think that one skill is not that valuable, and everything else is so bad that it's just not going to. I just don't have any faith in it getting to anything near neutral. And I'll just quickly touch on the defense. Like I just think he's bad. I think he's good at staying in front of players. Um, like he'll stay with him all the way for as long as they take him all the way to the rim. Like he can stay in front of them. He cannot prevent any sort of paint penetration, or prevent a guy from getting to where he wants to go on the court. He'll stay in front of them. He'll make sure that he's right there with them, but uh, that means significantly less when you are consistently allowing them to get where they want. So I just, and off the ball, like I kind of already said, and I think Cooper touched on it. Like the motor doesn't run super hot. I don't think he's going to make any plays. I don't think he's not necessarily lost, where he's trying to figure out where he needs to be on the court, although that is the case in some situations. But I think more of it is just he's sometimes going to be there, and if he is, he's going to be there in a way that is not meaningful enough to prevent any sort of paint penetration or make a meaningful contest. And I think that is just really, when you're that bad defensively and you're that bad at everything else on offense, I really have a hard time trying to picture him as a real sort of prospect.
One last note before I let Bryce fight back a little bit. His closeouts are horrendous. He rotates all right, and he seems to have like an okay understanding of where things are. But when he's asked to rotate from the paint to a shooter, it's a free driving lane basically every single time, right to the rim.
One more thing, I think that this is payback, I guess, to Bryce from earlier. I think that there's just he applies no pressure on the ball. Like it's not even, he stays in front of guys, but he applies zero pressure. And I think a lot of good collegiate players picked up on that and were like, this guy's never going to try and make a play on the ball against us. So we're just going to take him all the way to the rim, or we're going to go where I want. And they have a lot more confidence in doing so, knowing that McNeely's not going to be aggressive in trying to make a move on them when they have the ball.
Wow. I don't even know where to start. I think calling him not a real prospect is at least a little bit unfair. I do think, you mentioned the academy brain thing, and I do really see that. You go back and you watch the Montverde tape, it was similar, right? I think that's a really fair point. But I do think he's really smart. I do think he is a really good shooter with some ability as a downhill driver, even if it's not as a finisher. But I think you guys are right that he probably can't be a lottery guy. there's just too many questions. Now, again, this is a guy where I could see him returning lottery value in time. Defensively, I'll push back a little bit. I agree the closeouts are awful. He doesn't make plays because the ground coverage is not good. But the motor is good. Yeah, that might be it.
When you talk it out, there's just not much there. And this is why, for me personally, I have him, out of all the guys we've talked about, the lowest on my board. I have him 14th. And he is in a tier where he's someone I would maybe consider giving a two-way contract to.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to be higher than that. So even with the issues that I do agree with, I still have him. I have him in the same tier as Common Malawak. I have him above Jaeger Demon, where I do think that there is certain value that comes with being the level of shooter he is, the level of handoff operator he can be, and even with being an academy brain guy, some of those academy brain passes are pretty damn good. I think offensively he can provide enough value to be a real NBA player, even if defensively I do think it's and I will say I do think there's a world that defensively he can still avoid getting attacked. Like Stone's right, he doesn't pressure up, he doesn't really make a difference, but he doesn't just get dusted either. He had moments where he did okay on solid off-ball players, chasing them around. So I think there's a little bit more than you do. I have him a tier above Jaeger Demon. But I think I agree that he can't be a lottery guy for me. And I'd even listen to an argument about Demon over him probably. Though I can't let go of my priors in that I did think McNeeley was a legitimately great shooter with size. And so even though he wasn't a great shooter this year, I do still think there's a world that he, if he's a Kevin Huerter level guy, where's that value at? It's not horrible, right? I mean, you'd probably take Kevin Huerter top 20 still. I think that's a realistic outcome here, like a very realistic outcome. He's about this is the type of guy who usually spends multiple years in college, and he probably got a little bit overhyped in high school because he played for Montford. That's kind of my takeaway. In a couple of years, we're going to be talking about a kid named Winters Grady. This is a sneak peek. This will be a great clip. In 2 years, we're going to be talking about a kid named Winters Grady. And we're going to be talking about a kid who went to Michigan and didn't play a ton as a freshman, but was really efficient. And then played a lot as a sophomore, was really efficient, and probably played as a junior and was great. And then we're going to be talking about him as a draft prospect. If McNeeley hadn't been a top 10 guy out of high school, that's probably what we'd be talking about with McNeeley right now. Oh, man, what a weird freshman year he had, where he kind of had to play point guard for UConn. That's so weird. But next year they're going to have better guys, and he's going back and he's going to make some real noise. Man, McNeeley had a really efficient sophomore year, and UConn was pretty damn good. Man, UConn was a Final Four team after his junior year, and he was a huge part of it. Now he's a top 20 pick, but he's making the wrong decision. How much do we want to punish him for that? How much will he be punished for that? How patient are NBA teams willing to be? I don't know, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. He's coming out a year or two too early, but I think he's a talented player, and I think that he's probably maybe a little bit underrated because people are going to look at the stat profile and be like, "Man, I'm out." Then there's also people that are going to overrate him because they don't understand the logic behind the high school ranking as high as I was, as much as I'm a contributor to this issue because he was a preseason top 10 guy for me. So that's where I come down with it, I guess. Coop, where are you at with him?
So to me, the issue with McNeeley is really similar to my issue with Ace, right? Where there's a lot of talent, right? The talent is obvious. If you watch him, it's obvious there's something there, just not fully there, right? In the same way that it is with Ace. Ace is a talented shot maker. Efficiency is just not there. McNeeley, great off-ball shooter, has some good indicators of the shot still being there, but there's too many holes there, I think, in the shot itself. Like Bryce, you talked about the foot setup stuff, the very touch-reliant, weak core. There's just too many issues there for me to be really confident in that even coming around, that I'm like, confident in betting on that talent. Right. So I think I'm going to end up with him above Demin, but in the same tier and below, a tier below Malawatch and Ace Bailey in my two ways and undrafted free agents tier. I think my big issue is NBA teams do not have the patience. If you're going to come in and your only job is going to be shooting, and you can't do that after a year or two at his size, where he's not like a Darius Garland or a Reed Shepherd, where he's got the small guard excuse, but there's still other stuff to his game where he's contributing. If he doesn't come in and hit threes, for a season and a half, he might just be done. And that's a really hard spot to be in as a prospect. And I do wish he had come back to school and really, worked on his game, worked on his just repetition over and over, his core strength, fixing that kind of stuff. Because I think it would have paid dividends, and he could have had like a Corey Kispert type draft season.